Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 17 Interview. Over the past 2 weeks, Egon and Izuku were able to interview every last person set up by the professor and doctor. Each person came on a different day, and the interviewer changed from Izuku and Egon when one of them weren't busy. Rarely was it both, and like before, Egon told Cephalopod and Orpton to take a back seat on this one, much to their dismay. The very first person they interviewed was an older Japanese woman with short black hair, a muscular yet chunky body, and a blue eye with one covered with an eye patch. Today's interviewer was Izuku, who skimmed through her background and her resume. So, Miss Kobayashi-cho, it says you're 40 years old? He asked as the woman nodded. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I'm not judging you because of your age, just curious why you would be looking for a new job, Izuku assured her, thinking of the worst case scenario with his question. She thought for a minute, then explained. Well, I felt like I needed a change of pace, and retired life just wasn't cutting it for me. It's more something to keep me busy. As I'm sure you saw, I have several degrees in manufacturing, construction, and research. Izuku confirmed with a nod and glancing at her resume said, I did. So what exactly did you do for work before this? I was a decorated war veteran, Purple Heart, she told them nonchalantly. War veteran? Izuku exclaimed while nearly falling out of his seat. Cho then took out a few items from her bag and placed them in front of him. The first was a picture of her in full uniform and covered in medals. The next was a Purple Heart certificate. Izuku had to blink several times to ensure he saw this correctly. In a small voice, he said, Oh my goodness! Due to my aid in the Battle of Criss-Crossing by hot-wiring the enemy tank and using it against them, that's where I lost the eye, I was able to bring the battle machine back, take it apart, see how it was made, and draw up schematics for it. She spun her short tail with a nostalgic tone. That's incredible! Izuku exclaimed while pushing his hair back. He then stood up and saluted her while stating, Well, ma'am, allow me to say thank you for your service, and you're hired. Cho stood up with a smile and saluted him back. A few days later, Egon was the interviewer, as the next person came in. A tall, scruffy and scrappy man with pink hair and golden eyes, covered in grease and oils with many tears in his clothing. In short, he did not look ready for an interview. His smile was big and proud, his excitement palpable, his eyes alert, or eye, since he only had one, and the other, with a small portion of his face, was covered up in mechanical replacements. Wary of him already, Egon looked through his background check and resume. After a bit of thought, he broached the topic, asking, Mr. Shishihatsume, it says here you had some problematic behavior with your other workplace. Care to explain? He smiled while proudly pointing a thumb at himself and explaining, Ah, yes. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but I consider myself somewhat of an out-of-the-box genius. Go on. So, I like to do things and test things out others don't or won't do. So that's what got me in trouble, he continues. I see. He then sighs while shrugging and saying, So they fired me. But whatever I did, I got results, even if they did explode 3 or 10 times. That's also how I replaced one of my eyes. Aha, Egon replied while narrowing his eyes. If you're still not convinced, allow me to show you one of my inventions, he offered while taking something from inside his overalls and placing it on the table. Ta-da! Egon narrowed his eyes as he observed aloud. A toy sci-fi gun? In front of him was what looked like a plastic ray gun with paint and stickers to make it appear appealing to children. Hatsume giggled. That's just to make it appear less threatening. Allow me to demonstrate. He then pointed to the toy at a small potted plant and shot out a beam. A beam came out, grabbed the plant, and pulled it right to his hand. The only thing Egon could say was, "Wow." "It's a tractor beam," Hatsume said in a sing-song tone before things went wrong. As soon as the plant went to him, several other random objects started to shift before flying at him and attaching to his body alongside Egon, who was pulled right out of his seat. From there, he was pressed front to front with Hatsume, nose to nose in a very awkward position. The two of them looked at one another for a long while before saying with a coy tone, "Oh, sir, I didn't know you cared." "Turn it off, just turn it off," Egon growled at him. He flicked the off switch and all the attracted items, including Egon, finally fell or broke away. Egon grunts at him and Hatsume chuckles nervously while saying, "It might still have a few bugs." After straightening out his lab coat and fixing his glasses, he tells the man, "If we hire you, then you'll have to be monitored. No interacting with others during work, and be placed in a highly secure room so you don't cause too much destruction." "Sounds perfect to me," Hatsume answered in zeal. After brushing himself off, Egon extends his hand and says, "Well, welcome aboard, Mr. Hatsume. Please don't make me regret this decision," he told them with a flat tone as Hatsume was shaking his hand in excitement. A week after that, the next newcomer came and was interviewed by Izuku. Once again, with a background check and a resume on hand, he looked over everything she had, and he liked what he saw so far. The interviewee was a young woman in her mid-20s with long straight blonde hair, green eyes, a mix of yellow and pink accessories that appeared to be a mix between Japanese and Spanish. She seemed to be very excitable and always had a bright smile on her face the whole time. Before Izuku could say anything, the woman spoke out and told him in an elated tone, "First of all, I'd just like to give you thanks for giving me this opportunity, sir." "Thank you for coming out here, Miss Ayuko Miyazaki," Izuku replied while making sure to pronounce her name correctly. She giggled and waved her hand off while offering, "Oh, please, call me Honey Lemon. All my friends do." "Well, Honey Lemon, I like what I see so far. You have many degrees and credentials to go with it," Izuku complimented her as he looked over her resume. Thank you, I worked really hard to get them," Honey Lemon said back with a proud smile. "I would like to ask, and if you're unsure about my abilities, I brought something with me to show you. Do you have anything made out of metal?" she asked while digging through her enormous shoulder bag. Izuku was a bit unsure, but allowed curiosity to take over, and he went to his comlink, talking over he called into the facility. "Can someone bring me something made of metal we don't need?" He then pushed the speaker again and said firmly, "And not a Mimcutie this time, please." A few minutes later, an in-process robot created by Dr. Orpington walked with a sheet of metal. Once it stood the solid piece up, it left, and Honey Lemon finally found what she was searching for. She jumped up to the metal sheet and began spraying it with something that came out of a pink-colored spray bottle. After several sprays, it left a pink mist hanging all around it. From there, she pulled out another device that electrically charged the air around it, and the mist instantly turned the middle slab pink. "Ta-da!" Honey Lemon proclaimed. "So pink?" Izuku observed while trying not to sound unimpressed. She chuckled excitedly and said in a sing-song tongue, "Here's the best part." She then walked up to the pink metal and touched it with only her index finger. Right away, the sheet seemed to explode into a pink cloud all around them, some of it dusting Izuku's face, hair, and coat. "Whoa!" was the only thing he could say in amazement. "I know, right? Chemical metal embrittlement," Honey Lemon exclaimed in zeal as she took over her pink-colored glasses and tried to brush off her pink outfit. Izuku quickly dusted himself, and sticking out his hand, he tells her, "Well, Honey Lemon, you're hired." Honey Lemon squealed in joy and began to rapidly shake Izuku's hand while half yelling, "Oh, thank you, 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 thank you," though she quickly realized how hard and rough she was shaking him, and stopped while apologetically saying, "Oh, I'm sorry." The next day, Egon took up the next interview and was met with a man whose features were hard to pin down, since several parts of him kept changing to different animals. The only constant thing was his green eyes and brown hair. Looking at his record and resume, Egon inquired, "Mr. Anima Genus, it says on your resume that you are a zoologist. Why come to work here?" Genus looked like he was resisting the urge to roll his eyes as he exclaimed, "My previous work had me only studying animals and their environments, behaviors, and nothing else. I wanted to try and find a new way to help animals while adjusting to new environments and bolster population, not dig through rhino dung to study their diet. I thought about changing my career choices for that, and here I am." "I understand your frustration." Egon sympathizes with the man before looking and thinking things over before saying, "Well, consider yourself hired." 2 days later, after that, both Izuku and Egon were able to collaborate on the next interview. With the information in hand, the two men sat across from the next potential employee. It was a short, stout woman of African descent. Her skin was colored like soil, and freckles decorated her cheeks, and her hair was a giant bush that was shaped like an afro. Egon was the first to start saying, "Miss Pamela Hollyhock, I'm a bit concerned with what I found about you." She raised her eyebrow, and he continued, "You created a literal monster Venus flytrap, and it ate 3 people. Care to explain that?" She huffed at that, then answered, "Well, honey, back when I worked at the Tokyo Botanical Research Facility, I had told my co-workers not to come into one of the greenhouses for a while, as I was working on a special self-made assignment. Took it up with the whole chain of command and they okayed it. But a couple of yahoos tried to sneak into it to steal it and take the credit. And, well, you can guess what happened after that. So I had to take the blame and got canned. Dang, what a deal breaker. I hate it when companies do nothing to protect their employees from perspective of saving face. Hollyhock nods in reply. Izuku then goes off track and says, I can't say that those people deserved it, but if you get killed by a stationary plant, then at that point it's natural selection. He looks at Egon and he shrugs nonchalantly. Hollyhock hums and agrees. I hear, honey. I do have one more concern to bring up. Nothing wrong with it, it's just that, well, I'm sure I don't have to tell you that a work environment like this has many dangers, including machinery and chemicals. I wouldn't want you to get hurt. Egon attempted to tell her as nicely as possible. She smiles and with a wave assures him, Not to worry, sweeties, I can control all living plant life. With a twitch of her head, and her afro shrinks and morphs into long braid-like vines. She then wiggles her index finger, and the potted plant on Egon's desk grows so large and fast that it breaks its pot and sprouts cut white flowers. The two men watches this in awe, before looking at one another in amazement. Then back to her, where Egon proclaimed, Wow, well, you're hired. On the last day of the 2 weeks, Egon took hold of the last interview and was very confused on what's going on. It was an interview for one person, but there were 3 different jobs. Was one person trying to do 3 jobs? It made no sense, and Professor Cephalopod, who set it up, was no help in explaining it, just being vague with a knowing and entertaining glance. When he got to his office, he was even more confused. There stood 3 identical people, all females in their 30s, tall, thin, blue eyes, black hair, all wearing the same clothes, and, in fact, they all looked exactly like one another, apart from how they styled their hair. The one on the right had long hair and curls at the ends. The one in the middle had median hair in ringlets. The one on the left had short hair that was swept to the side. All 3 girls, upon seeing Egon, all got up and bowed deeply, saying in scary unison, Greetings, sir. Egon was taken back, and he didn't know how to reply, which gave the girls more than enough time to introduce themselves. I'm Morgan, said the girl with the long hair. I'm Megan, said the girl with the medium hair. And I'm Millicent, said the girl with the short hair. Egon took note on how all their voices sounded the same, and after adjusting himself to the uncomfortableness, he greeted back while asking, Nice to meet you girls as well. So you're all looking to become my organizers, secretary and receptionists respectfully? He then looked down at his hand that held their resume, and he observed aloud, But you only gave me 1 resume. Why is that? We are one person, all 3 answered in unison. Egon raised an eyebrow and asked, Sorry, what do you mean? The 3 girls closed their eyes and began to vibrate faster and faster until they became 3 blurry images. The 3 melded into one, and after the vibrating stopped, there stood a beautiful woman. Like the all 3 girls before, she had the same face, eyes, and everything, apart from her hair, which was long and straight. The woman bowed in the same voice but with a different tone, greeted, Hello, sir. My name is Morgan Laffell. My quirk grants me the ability to split my body and consciousness in 3 ways. I've done this so many times up to the point where my other personalities do not like being in one body for too long. Egon blinks a few times and replies, This makes a lot more sense. After adjusting himself, he tells the woman, While I understand the fact you are 3 people with one body, By law, I can only pay you one salary." "That was to be expected," Morgan agreed with a nod. Egon looked down over her resume, and after a bit of thought he said, "Well, I like what I see in your resume, so you're hired." Egon looked up from the paper only to see 3 girls as they spoke in unison. "Thank you very much." Egon had to repress the urge to freak out, and instead forcefully blew out air to stay calm as he muttered, "That's gonna need some getting used to." After 2 weeks had ended, Egon called all the interviews to tender a meeting at a facility. A few days later, on the first official day of work, everyone gathered in the front entry loft, where talk was abuzz in the area as everyone got to know one another. Though the talking quickly subsided when Egon and Izuku walked into the room. Everyone, please gather around," Egon called as everyone present formed a circle around the 2 men. Egon cleared his throat and announced, "As the owner and operator of the Neo Icon Phoenix Research Laboratory, I would like to be the first to say welcome and congratulations. It is a pleasure to have each one of you working with us." Everyone clapped in response, with some of them jumping for joy, whistling or laughing. Egon put his hand out and once again he said, "I expect to see great things and great achievements from all of you. I hope you can make me proud." Yes, sir. Egon clapped his hands and stated, "Great to hear. Now, if you have any questions or concerns regarding anything, please bring it up with me or our Vice President, Dr. Midoriya." He motioned to the small boy beside him, who looked like a frightened dog that just got yelled at for pooping inside the house. No hands went up, much to Izuku's relief. Public speaking was never a skill for him, that is until Hollyhock raised her hand. Izuku gulped and steadied himself as he called out, "Yes?" "How exactly do you run this place? It's huge and has been operating for weeks. How do you do it?" she asked the 2 men. The 2 of them looked at one another before smiling as Egon answered, "I'm glad you asked, because I was thinking of a way to tell you all that. Before all of you, we had 2 others helping us. They'll be your senior co-workers, and, I warn you, they are a bit strange." All the people looked at him confused or like he was crazy, making Egon's sweat drop at seeing them not understand. Izuku tugged on his sleeves and offered, Maybe it would be better if we just show them." Izuku then went over to the front desk phone and pushed the facility speaker, calling out, "Professor Cephalopod and Dr. Orpington, please come to the main foyer." After putting the phone down, they were all struck with the sound of something very fast down the hallway and towards their directions. After finding the source, they all stepped away from the hallway as they heard 2 voices yelling at each other, both getting closer and closer with each word. "Slow down, you pompous poultry!" Professor Cephalopod screamed in fright. "I can't! Your slimy fishbowl fried my controls!" Dr. Orpington screamed back at him as she attempted to gain control over her cart. "We're gonna crash!" the professor yelled as one of the foyer main walls zoomed into view. "I'm gonna die!" crowed the doctor in terror. Suddenly, the mechanical cart crashed into the wall at top speed with bits of parts, metal, glass, and water flying all over the place as everyone jumped out of the way, covered themselves up, or watched in a mixture of awe and horror. Finally, out of the chaos was a single wheel that rolled out from the wreckage and spun around to stop on the floor in front of them. "What was that?" the Morgana triplets asked in unison. "Your co-workers," Egon drowned. The 2 animals managed to pull themselves out from the wreckage and stumbled into view. Luckily, it didn't seem like they were hurt, just dazed from the impact. Otto was the first to shake out of his stupor and saw that they were being looked at by all new employees with confusion. Adjusting himself and his translator, he saw his compatriots and tried to get her back into motion. He slapped the doctor's back and stated, "Put yourself back together, Penny Henny. Our new work associates are here and you're making us look bad." "My brain feels like pudding," Chuck replied in a dazed tone with swirls in her eyes. Forgoing trying to help her, he turned around and after clearing his throat, he introduced himself. "Greetings everyone, my name is Professor Otto Cephalopod. It's a pleasure to work with so many intelligent minds. And the half-dead bird you see is my associate, Dr. Cluck Orpington." He motioned to the chicken that was barely able to stand on its legs. Suddenly, Cluck shook herself back to consciousness and exclaimed, "Your associate? I think you mean my associate." Otto rolled his eyes and shot back. "Of course you'd come out of your stupor for a comment like that. What is that meant to mean?" she yelled while getting into his face. "Why don't you use that big head of yours to figure it out, Chicken Little?" he yelled while pushing her back. She growled and yelled, "My head may be big, but at least my brain is smarter than yours, Squidward." Otto then curled his tentacles in anger and proclaimed, "I hate how his name and species don't correlate at all." As the two of them continued to bigger, everyone else was staring at the two hyper-intelligent animals in a mixture of awe, wonder, and confusion, making Egon slap his face while Izuku smiled and laughed awkwardly. "Talking animals?" Hankayo observed aloud. "Cool!" Honey Lemon, Hatsune, and Gina spoke in unison. "I hope you boys didn't make any talking plants?" Hollyhock asked suspiciously. "Not yet," Egon tells her with a sigh, knowing the inevitable. "You could be the first," Izuku jokingly offered. Cho shakes her head and states, "Welp, I've officially seen it all." Hankayo placed a hand on her head and tells her, "I get the feeling you're saying that too soon." As he told her this, Pete walked into the room, attracted to all the commotion, and began to peck mindlessly at the destroyed machine. Cho went to open her mouth, but Hankayo gripped it tightly, making her look at him, where he just solemnly shook his head. Cho understood and just dropped it, allowing everything to play out as it was, in chaos. Chapter 18. Dragon. Egon looked over the large sheet of schematics on his much cleaner desk. It was the map of the whole facility, with detailed outline on all security measures on the premises. Hidden turrets, traps, sensors, Tesla gates, and much more were outlined in the promise of maximum security. After looking it over for quite a while, he fixed his glasses to look up at the happily excited, smiling face of Dr. Cho. He cleared his throat and told her in a nervous tone, "While I do like the schematics you have for an in-facility security system, Dr. Cho, I'm just a bit worried about, how should I say this, extreme and faithful it is. Don't you think it's too much?" Cho raised her eyebrow as she leaned in and shot back. "With what we got and are doing here, I'd say it's almost too little. This is honestly the watered-down version of what I originally thought up." "Holy Christ!" Egon exclaimed as he thought of the ramifications. Watching as Cho sat back to glance at him with a smug look. Seeing her point, he told her with a sigh, "Well, I can't argue with that. I'll allow it, and if need be, we'll add later on. But add some non-lethal defense as well. Can't be all gun-ho for every situation." "You may commence construction on it." Dr. Cho nods and rolls up the diagrams before leaving the new automatic sliding doors made by Professor Hatsume. Once she left, the doors stayed open as someone else barged in. Egon, noticing this, looked up from his desk and saw Izuku. He was red in the face, shaking like a leaf, and 2 seconds from crying. Egon sighed lightly to himself and said, "Oh boy." "Yes, Izuku, what have you done this time?" "It was an accident," he finally muttered through shaky breaths. "I thought you were house-trained," Egon replied with raised eyebrow. "Professor." Egon placed up his hands and in a calm tone told him, "I'm just teasing. What's bugging you so badly?" Izuku sniffs back his emotions and steadies his voice and as he answers, "I was dabbling around with the evolution and quirk splinters, and I made something I had no intention of making." Egon, waiting for the rest, prompted firmly, "Well, don't leave me in the dark." Izuku walked up to the desk on shaky legs, his emotions just moments from spilling over, as fear gripped his heart at how his boss would react to his newest blunder. And as he reached out into his coat and brought out a small creature cupped in his hands, showing it to the man reluctantly, Here." Egon looked down at the creature, adjusting his glasses, seeming to be nothing but an oddly coloured lizard. He chuckled at what Izuku was so scared about and proclaimed, "Is that it? This teeny tiny lizard is all that you made? I was expecting something far more." He trailed off as a small lizard took a mammalian gait, sprouted a set of small wings, and breathed out a puff of smoky fire. "Dangerous?" he said in confusion. He looked at the boy, who was begging to shake and cry, while asking him calmly, "Izuku, did you make a—" The boy broke down into tears, hunching over and covering his face as he wailed, "I didn't mean to. I didn't realize it would happen." Egon was shocked by his reaction to him and almost froze up, but luckily he kept himself together and placed the baby dragon on his desk while he tended to the terrified crying boy. Holding his shoulders, petting his head, he told him, Okay, let's calm down. I'm not mad, just surprised. It's not like you tried to hide this from me until it got out of hand, or did it behind my back, and you have told me it was a complete accident. Just give me the rundown of what's going on." You're not mad?" Izuku looked up with red, puffy eyes. "Just a little surprised, that's all." Izuku sniffles and gets help cleaning his face from Egon as he explains, "Well, after testing and gaining results of the quirk and evolution splinters, I thought, what would happen if both were used on the same creature? No plant I used would work, so I used animals instead. And to minimize any damage, I used a small creature that was a baby. He let Izuku breathe and collect himself a bit before he continued. But after a few minutes, he gently prompted him. So, I used the fertilized egg case of a gecko, and when it hatched, this came out. And it came to you as soon as I did. He finally finished off. Egon sat on his butt on the floor and breathed a sigh of relief, which was close enough for the baby dragon to climb onto his head, down his face, over his body, and across his lap before climbing into Izuku. The little lizard crawled up to his neck and cuddled into it. Observing the animal, Egon noticed how different it was from most reptiles at a second glance. Apart from the wings and the mammalian gait, it had distinct claws on all four limbs, a head it held upright, two stubs for horns, eyes large enough to be seen from both the side and the front, and its skin was a mix between scales and regular skin. Still, it was a normal size for a newly hatched gecko. After he breathed out any stress, he told Izuku in a calm tone, "Okay, good. I know the details. We can work on finding out more pressing things about this new species, like how big it will grow, and what it will eat, what temperament it has, and so forth. After that, we will decide whether or not to keep it or kill it while it's still young and manageable." "No need for that. I have just a solution," a voice called out from the still open doorway. Both men looked over, and together they said, "Professor Cephalopod?" "What do you mean by that?" Izuku asks. "Me and Professor Genus were collaborating," he started off. "That's not good," Egon muttered under his breath. "And made this," he finishes while placing a strange splinter at their feet that seemed to change the brightness of itself while changing into many psychedelic colors. Egon held up the strange pulsing crystal and asked, "And this is?" "The splinter does in days what thousands of years of selecting breeding does," the Professor Cephalopod explained vaguely. "Huh?" both said at once. The professor rolls his eyes and explains further. Keep it near any wild thing. It will become as domestic as a dog in just a few days." Well, at least this solves that specific dilemma of this thing turning on us, Izuku stated while admitting to Splinter's strange colors. As the two men were looking at the psychedelic splinter, Odo tried to make this escape, only for Egon to catch wind of something and shout, "Hold it right there, calamari boy." Egon grabbed the octopus under his eyes and brought him face to face. "What else?" "What do you mean?" Otto asked innocently. Egon squeezed him tighter and exclaimed, "Don't what do you mean, me? My IQ may not be half as high as yours, but I wasn't born yesterday. What else did you and Professor Genius make while collaborating?" Giving a nervous laugh and rubbing the back of his head, he admitted, "Ah, yes, about that. I was going to come to you about something else." "What?" Egon growled while squeezing him again. After a moment of contemplation, Cephalopod tells him, "You're gonna have to change Gameth's feeding regime." "Why? To what?" Izuku was the one to inquire, being the main caretaker. "An adult amount," Cephalopod tells him while trying to look away and sweating. Izuku looks at him weirdly. Egon adjusts his grip so the two would speak face to face as Izuku asks further, "She's a baby. She won't be an adult for another decade or so." About that," Cephalopod laughs nervously. Egon squeezed him again and snarled, "About what?" After tapping his tentacles, he tried to say, "Well..." Before he could answer fully, a loud sound, like a trumpet being amplified through a jet engine, sounded through the now closed doors. Both men looked at one another when the sound stopped, and they ran out of the automatic doors, Professor Cephalopod still in hand. As they ran, the loud sound rang out once more, and they were able to follow it right to the front entry foyer, where they saw something that made their jaws drop. Standing in front of them and eating the decorative plants was a fully grown woolly mammoth, while Dr. Genus tried to get a hold of it. Meanwhile, Megan, who was manning the desk, looked unfazed at the enormous prehistoric creature eating everything around her. After letting this shock and amazement pass by, Egon asked rhetorically, "Professor Cephalopod, why is our baby mammoth calf now a full-grown adult mammoth cow?" "Me and Professor Genus have made several different splinters for population searching, one of which causes any organism to rapidly develop," the professor admitted, only to be squeezed again as he asked in a repressed, angry tone, "And do you try to hide this from me? Why?" "We needed to run some more tests," Otto explained while sweating before he tried to save himself by offering, "On the plus side, we made sure to spay her before doing so." Egon gave him a half-lidded look as Izuku informed him, "You know that only works on boys, right?" making the professor turn pale. Egon looked ready to burst the gasket, and even now the fully grown mammoth could sense it and started to walk away. Izuku stepped back with the baby dragon in his hair, and Gina started to hide behind the desk as Megan tried to make herself look busy. But no fury came, and he calmed himself down with an irritated sigh as he stated calmly, "Izuku, you are no longer solely responsible for the care of Gameth. From now on, Professor Cephalopod and Genus will help as well. Understood?" Yes, sir," the octopus and man replied quickly in unison. After placing the octopus on the ground and fixing its hair and glasses, he turned back to the facility and said, "Come along, Izuku. Let's run some tests and diagnostics on our new fire-breathing friend." With that, Izuku filed after him to a testing chamber to run some tests on the new animal, leaving Cephalopod and Genus to try and round up Gameth back into her enclosure. Truly the first of many strange days to come. Hey guys, how you going? Sorry if the audio quality varies a lot in this video. I had to record this over several days, so my voice and stuff changed, especially since I was recording it at night. We've officially gotten to the hiring part. Now we've got our main cast fully developed. Not mainly our research facility people. Now that they're here, the story is going to start moving on a bit faster. Hope you guys enjoyed. Bye!